Hi friends, my name is Al or Lilstarnerd, and welcome to another episode of Fear Factor. One thing that I've been doing a lot in my life lately and talking about somewhat on my channel is facing my art fears. In general, I've just really been trying to do the things that scare me and get better and level up. I want to be a better artist, and that includes not letting things hold me back just because they're scary to me. From the 100 Heads challenge to drawing more outside, doing plein air stuff, tackling oil painting and the 100 feet challenge, I've been trying to challenge myself and face my fears head on. But there is one thing that I would consider my greatest obstacle. It's something that I used to do quite regularly, then neglected for so long that being able to do it at all evades me entirely. It's something that I really want to be good at, and every time I try, I do so badly that I give up again. It's this constant cycle of promising myself I'll practice and get better, failing on the first try, and giving up and then starting again a few months later. And so I thought, after my 100 feet challenge, that worked so well for me. Doing something that was really hard for me for 10 days in a row made it so much easier for me. Maybe that's the key. Maybe if I do this again, it'll help me face my biggest art fear. But 10 days is not enough for this specific challenge. Because I'm not trying to practice one specific thing, like feet. I'm trying to learn a whole new medium. So starting today and for the next 2 weeks, I will be doing digital art every day. It's kind of a scary task. But I won't be alone because I will be helped by Clip Studio Paint, who is also sponsoring today's video. Because it's going to be 2 weeks straight, and I'm also really, really busy this time of year, I have no daily goals. I can do as much or as little as I want. If I have a lot to do today, all I need to do is a sketch. And if I have extra free time, maybe I can do 2 pieces. The goal is to just do digital art every day. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I might not be a master at it, but I want to be confident in my abilities. Today is October 17th, it's day 1. I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm excited, and I'm not gonna know how it ends until I get there, so let's get drawing. I started out the first few days, honestly the first week, basically just trying to find my footing. It was a lot of getting familiar with the program, finding my baseline, getting warmed up, just trying to figure out what the heck am I doing? Day 1, I purposely went in with something I felt comfortable with, was excited to do, and felt like I could do well right off the bat. I just love drawing bowls of ramen, seriously, it's so fun. I feel like it's so easy to make it look good, I love a good bowl of ramen. Ironically, I don't like eating ramen, but I do love drawing ramen. Oh, also, thank you to all you guys for using the hashtag #drawme_al and giving me your photos to use and sending me your food pics. It was so helpful to just have that Rolodex of photos to use. The ramen bowl and a lot of other photos in this video did come from you guys, so huge shout out to you, thank you. The first few days, I was feeling the same frustration I always feel when I try digital art. I was confused and struggling and just didn't understand why things didn't look the way I wanted them to look. I have always struggled with visualizing how I want my digital art to look, and then I sit down to do it and just have no idea what to do, so I approach it the same way I do traditionally, and then I never like the result. There are so many artists that I really like and am inspired by, and a lot of them are digital artists. I can pinpoint the things I like about their styles, I know what I theoretically would like to replicate, but translating that into my own art has been so difficult for me for so long. And I don't know why. I think my brain is just so used to doing things traditionally, it's really hard for my brain to switch over and take an entirely different approach. Because the truth is, the look I want my digital art to have is nothing like what my traditional art looks like at all. I've been looking for the right mix of stylized and realism, looking up to people like Norman Rockwell and J.C. Leyendecker, all the way to digital artists like Horoscopes. But I have no idea where that middle is for me, what that looks like for me. I think I found that nice middle in traditional art, at least for some things, but digitally it seems to be totally impossible. But that's the point of this challenge. I don't want it to feel impossible anymore. I don't expect to come out the other side as like a perfect digital artist, suddenly just knowing exactly how to do it all perfectly. I just don't want it to be so mentally difficult and draining and scary. I don't want to keep avoiding it because I know no matter what I do, I'll be disappointed with the results. I talk a lot about persistence and practice, but if I'm being honest, it's hard to stay dedicated when you just keep failing time after time, no matter what you do. But I got so scared of that failure that I kind of just gave up on trying with digital art. So even though this challenge was hard, like very mentally hard, easily the hardest challenge I've ever done, ever, even though it was so difficult, I was excited for the possible outcomes. Although one thing that did make things so much easier, and I was so excited about, the default brushes that come with Clip Studio are literally my dream brushes. Specifically the mechanical pencil for sketching and the gouache brush for coloring. Like, oh my god, they're so good. I've always kind of thought that if I could just find a brush that blends by itself, if I could just find the right brush, digital art would be so much easier. But I've never been able to find the brushes I was looking for until Clip Studio came and absolutely saved the day. The second I tried the gouache brush, I was literally like squealing. I was so excited to finally have my actual dream brush. Before Clip Studio, my go-to was Photoshop, but the thing about Photoshop is it's not just for digital art, it's for a lot of other things too. And so I always struggled to get a good setup that felt really intuitive and easy. Clip Studio is made for art, and you can definitely tell, it's so much easier to use in that sense. And in Photoshop, they have a lot of default brushes, like a lot, but they have so many and it's genuinely overwhelming, and I find a lot of them are essentially useless. And finding custom brushes that are actually what I want is such a hassle. So when I was going through and testing all the Clip Studio brushes, I was just over the moon because every brush was unique and I could see a real use for each of them. There weren't too many that it was overwhelming. And like I said, they had my dream brushes. The gouache brushes are just so great. In fact, a lot of the brushes work this way, where the opacity is really affected by the pen pressure, and it acts as like an actual wet medium, like a real wet medium, and blends with whatever you're drawing on top of as you go. So you can achieve this really beautiful painterly look via the brush instead of having to go back and manually blend with a blender brush and getting like a weird airbrushed kind of look, which I hate. And you know what, while we're on the topic, let's thoroughly talk about Clip Studio, the sponsor of today's video. Before this challenge, I had heard of Clip Studio, obviously, but had never tried it before, and it did not take me long to just fall in love with the program. Like I said, the brushes are amazing, but also the UI is so nice, so intuitive, and it doesn't crash every few minutes like some other drawing programs I know. It's easy and genuinely fun to use. I've been loving learning all the features it has, playing around with the effects, and messing with all the really cool brushes, and I just love it. I've barely skimmed the top of everything Clip Studio has to offer in this 2-week challenge, but I will definitely be going back after this to continue using it and learning more. If you've been looking for a drawing program, maybe you've tried some out and they're just not working for you, maybe you're a beginner but you want something a bit more advanced than the basic free softwares, I would absolutely point literally anyone towards Clip Studio Paint. It is something for pretty much every kind of artist, and it's easy to use for anyone of any skill level. Prices vary depending on the place, but in the US, it's $49.99 for the base program and $219 for the full advanced program, but there are also monthly payment plans as well. It's really cool because the app is multi-device, so depending on how you purchase it, you can have the program on different devices, which that's really nice. If you're feeling a bit apprehensive about jumping in and purchasing the software, they actually offer a 3-month free trial, which, trust me, is plenty of time to get the hang of it and fall in love with the program. And subscription-based models aren't for everyone, so also keep in mind that there is the one-time purchase as well. Overall, it's got something for everyone. There's definitely a way to make it work for you. Test the waters to make sure it's a match. And the link to the free trial will be down below, so I definitely recommend you guys try that out if you're at all unsure. And I'm sure the free trial will convince you. Thank you to Clip Studio for sponsoring this video. I'm obsessed with the drawing program. I really am. I absolutely love it. So thank you. But okay, back to the challenge. By the end of the first week, I was feeling super discouraged. Things weren't going the way I wanted them to. I was really struggling with figuring out my style and method, and I was just feeling kind of down overall. I was tired, I had very little free time because I was dog sitting for my cousin, I was frustrated, and it was really showing in the art I was producing. But I was hoping that the second week would be better. Okay, so it is day 8. I am halfway through the challenge, so I thought I would do my mid-challenge check-in. Things have been going okay. It's really hard to put into words. Like, I don't know exactly how I'm experiencing it. And like, I don't know if it's going well or not. This isn't as simple as learning to draw one specific thing, you know? One thing I will say, I have always said that if I could just find the right brushes, I have these brushes in mind. If I could just find the right digital brushes, digital art would be so much easier. And that is true. I love the brushes that come with Clip Studio. Like, I'm obsessed, specifically mechanical pencil and gouache. Slay. I love them. They are making the process so much easier. I love working with them. The fact that the gouache brush blends is a lifesaver. These are definitely like my dream brushes that I've always like wanted to be able to find. So like, that's really good. Also, Clip Studio is just really easy to work with. I'm really enjoying being in it. I find it very intuitive, and I feel like every time I use it, I have to Google like, okay, how do I do this? And then it's really easy to do, and I learn a new cool feature. It has a lot of really cool features. It's a program, like it's definitely a drawing program. It's made for artists, whereas a lot of other programs that I've used, whether if they were made for artists, they probably weren't very good, or they're made for a bunch of other things and you can do art in it. Whereas this is like for artists, and it's a really good one for artists. So I'm really enjoying working with Clip Studio. So that aspect of it has been fine. Like I said, the brushes are making the process way easier. However, the products that I'm making with them, I don't know. Like, I don't feel like I'm any closer to figuring out how I want my art to look digitally. I feel like I'm understanding how to do digital art better, but I'm not finding my voice with it, you know? To be fair, I haven't done a lot of stuff that I think would be conducive to that. I've been doing portraits and food, ramen bowls, which I feel like I already kind of knew how to do. And when I haven't been doing that, I've either given up or done it in 5 minutes because I haven't really had time. I've been dog sitting the past few days, so I haven't had time to fully dedicate. Like, I haven't been able to go as hard as I wanted to for this. Now that we're going into the second week, I want to do drawings that I think will actually help me figure out my style. I want to be a bit more stylized. I want to figure out how I want to draw people, non-fully realistic, non-portraits in digital art. Did that make sense? Which means no more food references, even though I've only done 2, I think, and no more portraits. But I really want to try. Like, this is the crux of the challenge. I think I've warmed myself up in the first week, and I really want to come out of this having conquered my fear of digital art. And the only way to do that is to do the things that scare me. So we're gonna do it. Let's go. So I had all these hopes and plans for the second week, and of course on day 8 my computer had some sort of fit and wouldn't work. I was so burnt out and tired that I just didn't have the energy to care. I was going to try to make up for it later in the week or draw 2 pieces on day 9, but then I got stuck in traffic for 2 hours and got home really late and was so upset that I just didn't have the time on day 9. So I just took the L on day 8. For day 9, I wanted to do a Cearine-inspired outfit of the day kind of drawing. I was trying to be more purposeful about my reference photos and look for things that would be conducive for stylization and finding my digital style rather than just a bunch of portraits. But I was so focused on doing something stylized on a drawing of myself that I really threw myself off and just wasn't happy with it. I also tried a painting style inspired by Cearine, and it was so not working for me. Like, it was looking so bad. I decided to scrap it and start over, but I was too angry to do it that day, and I waited until day 10. Day 10 was a lot easier. I think I definitely realized that I shouldn't be making art when I'm that angry. It just won't end well, like, ever. Day 10 was the beginning of a major turnaround, although I didn't have my breakthrough moment quite yet. I basically reverted to my old style of digital drawing, which had never been satisfactory to me, save for maybe twice. But I just didn't know what to do. I was feeling lost and worried that I might not make it out of this video having learned anything. I was worried this whole challenge was a dud. So in attempts to just make something not awful, I resorted to old methods. Although with these new brushes, it was a little different. A bit messier, looser, more stylized from the original sketch. I ended the day happy with the final product, but still feeling as if I hadn't gotten any closer to my overall goal. Then day 11 happened. And this day, only a few days before the challenge ended, was the day of my breakthrough. One of you beautiful people who used the hashtag to provide me with references had like a mushroom elf photo shoot, and those photos were amazing. Like, the second I saw those, I thought, like, yeah, I'm gonna be drawing at least one of those at some point. I kind of wanted to save those references for the last day, but I was feeling like bad about the challenge, and honestly, I needed a softball. A photo like this is bound to give me a good result, even if I kind of do a bad job, you know? Plus, I really wanted to draw it. I knew I wanted it to be a bit stylized. I didn't want to get too caught up in being super realistic and getting every detail, and I knew I wanted to play around a bit in the software. But I still didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to digitally draw yet. So for complete lack of a better option, I started out with the way I always do digital art. And somehow, magically, the face was actually looking okay. I was liking the way the coloring process was going, and that gave me some confidence. And from there, I don't exactly know how, I don't know what I did that gave me the epiphany, but somehow I found a coloring trick that I just knew was going to work for me. And so I used it on the rest of the piece. And oh my God, it was magic. I was feeling so great about it. The method was working so well. I was on cloud 9. Honestly, it was amazing. I had a really great time messing around with the different brushes and effects for the background. I love those watercolor brushes, and I adore how the final piece turned out. I am genuinely obsessed with it. And I'm so glad I was able to actually put a background in, because that's always really hard for me. So day 12 was all about putting this method to use, seeing if it was a fluke, a one-time deal, or if I'd be able to use it again. I found another great reference photo from one of you guys that would lend itself really well to a digital piece, and I went ham with my newly discovered method. So let me break the method down for you, although I'm sure most digital artists will be like, yeah, duh. But it's so different to how I would work traditionally, it took me a while to figure this out. So I put a base down of the middle skin tone and build off of that with clipping masks, which is how I've always started my digital pieces, but this time it's better. From there, I put each element on a separate layer with its own base color. Then I use the airbrush to get a whole bunch of varying tones, colors, hues, values, whatever. Basically adding in a lot of that painting and subtle shifts without having to painstakingly paint each stroke and end up too painterly. But I'm still leaning towards realism and it doesn't look too flat or graphic. From there, I use the gouache brush and paint in blocks and shapes of specific colors that are vital for communicating what it is we're looking at. Depending on what it is, some of those shapes get kind of naturally blended out by the brush, and some stay super blocky. So like I said, day 12 was about putting this technique to the test, and I was definitely feeling like it was passing. I was getting so excited and confident because finally, I found a way to draw digitally that made sense and looked good. It was hitting that balance of stylization and realism that I have been searching for. I had some issues with this piece that in hindsight started with the sketch, and I didn't get to play around with the background and effects because this ended up being a bit more of a graphic piece, but I do really love how it turned out. And I ended day 12 feeling great about my progress. I started day 13 feeling super confident, but a bit wary. After a high usually comes a fall, and I was worried that despite day 12's test going well, that the technique might not work 3 days in a row. So today was the real test. Is this technique going to really work in the long term for me? I picked another great reference from you guys and just jumped right in. As I went, I thought about troubleshooting, editing, really wondering if I liked the way this style looked, including the heavy, sketchy pencil line work and lack of detail that I love to use traditionally. And I was realizing that this technique really does just work. It is so intuitive for me, and I found that there weren't things I really wanted to change about the method. I think it could really be applied to a lot of subjects, and it's definitely in the direction of where I want to go with my style. I wanted to replicate the success and pride of day 11 with the filled out background. Backgrounds have always been a hard thing for me, especially digitally. I tend to just put figures on top of a solid color background, and I hate the way it looks. I think adding the background to day 11 and the interaction with the environment via the lighting is really what sold that piece, and I wanted that feeling in this piece too. The problem is, I suck at backgrounds. So I tried to translate the background in the photo to the piece, again playing around with layers and lighting, and I love the result. I think this background really sells the whole piece, and honestly is something I can totally see myself using when I have no idea what to do for the background. After day 13, I felt fully confident that this digital technique was what I wanted to move forward with. The only problem was, on day 14, I had kind of run out of good reference photos that would work for this style. I also felt like I peaked for this challenge in particular. Either I wanted to end the challenge with a bang or not really try at all. On top of that, it was my day off and I had a bunch of Halloween prep to do because this was on the 30th. So with all those excuses under my belt, I phoned it in on day 14. I took it easy, feeling good about my overall progress and what I'd learned and feeling that I deserved a reward. So I did a few doodles, did a messy portrait painting, and officially ended the challenge. The 2-week digital challenge is over. And honestly, that was a journey. That was easily the hardest challenge that I've ever given myself, ever completed. It was a lot in 2 weeks. I definitely didn't come out of this like a master at digital art. I didn't suddenly like flip a switch and now I'm like perfect at it, but I definitely think I've made some major developments and I've learned some really important stuff. Like I might not be like the best at digital art, but I do feel like I'm at the beginning of like where I want to be, if that makes sense. I feel like I've gotten over all the issues and fears and concerns I had at the beginning of the challenge, and now I'm at a place where like this is the first step towards where I want to be as a digital artist. Instead of having no clue what to do, I now like have a solid foundation and starting place. So overall, I definitely think this challenge was a success. Like, did I make some great art? Maybe not. But I think I got what I wanted out of it, and I'm super excited about that. I learned a few key things that I want to share with you in case you're also struggling with digital art. I think transferring from traditional to digital is just like really difficult, like for your brain. And so it took me a while to like learn these things, and I'd like to share. One, brushes do matter, which I thought brushes mattered in the beginning, but I was like, that's just an excuse. That's like me giving myself reasons that I'm bad at it. But honestly, brushes are so important. It's important to know how to like use brushes that you're provided with, like know how to use them well and effectively. But on top of that, you have to find brushes that like you connect with, if that makes sense. Like for months, years now, there's been this ideal brush that I've had in my head that I thought if I could just find this brush, I would know how to do digital art better. And I found that brush with Clip Studio. And it was a brush that I like knew intuitively how to use and like connected with and worked with me. And that seriously made such a huge difference. Like with Photoshop, there were plenty of brushes that I liked and knew how to use, but they were never brushes that I like clicked with in that same way, and so I could never really get what I wanted out of them. So if you like need a good brush, like the brush that I've been talking about, like one that kind of blends as you go, if you've been looking for a brush like that, just get Clip Studio because most of the brushes are like that and it's amazing. Like I have been trying to find that kind of brush for Photoshop for so long from artists who claim to have brushes like that. Like I'll download their packs and they don't work that way. And oh my god, just Clip Studio really, really saved the day with that. Second thing I learned, the reference photo really matters. Like really and truly, it matters. In the beginning of the challenge, and also just like throughout my past with digital art, I've done a lot of like portraits and stuff and then wondered why, like why can't I figure out my style when I want to make my OCs? Like why can't I figure this out? Because I can't stylize portraits. I'm not getting any practice with portraits. Portraits and food photos are great for learning how to digitally paint, but it wasn't helping me figure out my style, which is what I wanted to do. So I definitely learned that like figures are the most conducive to stylization. I think days 9 through 13 were great examples of like what a good reference photo is and isn't. Day 9 and 10, where I was doing the photo of me, it was a figure, but it wasn't really good for stylization or digital art because it was kind of just me standing there. The pose wasn't really dynamic, there was no story being told, there was no easy elements to add, even lighting was kind of difficult, and adding any sort of setting or background was really difficult. Whereas day 11 was a great example of a digital illustration. Not only was there storytelling elements involved with this costume and the setting, but it had a great setting and background that could interact easily with the character. The figure itself was easily stylized while still being able to keep the elements that were most important for telling that story, and overall turned out to be a great illustrative piece. Day 12 was great for a graphic piece. It had a cohesive and limited color palette, a really interesting pose, and allowed for me to play around with the color palette, like using the same color for the line art, some of the dark areas, and the background, so it was much more graphic and interesting. Day 13 was another great example of like that illustrative vibe with the background and the interesting elements added. These kinds of references are like very different than what I've been looking for in the past. So I've definitely learned that like the reference matters, and if you pick a bad reference, you're gonna have a much harder time making the piece look good, and if you pick a good reference, that's half the work done for you. And then finally, I learned my approach to digital art. I can't get over this because one, it feels so intuitive, and two, like how did I not do this before? It's so different from how I work traditionally. I guess it's not super surprising I never thought of it this way, but it's not that far from what I was doing before. Basically, I lay a flat base and then do kind of like a digital wash with the airbrush, and then I block in shapes with a gouache brush on top. It is so easy, so intuitive, comes so naturally to me. I finally feel like I understand how to do digital art. Before, I literally I didn't know what to do. Like straight up, I would do stuff and I didn't like anything that I did because I just didn't know what to do. Now I like have an understanding of what am I even supposed to do, you know? So yeah, overall, I really feel like I've faced my fear. Digital art no longer feels like some major obstacle that's evading me. And I feel like I'm at a really great starting point to kind of move forward and build off of this skill and slowly grow my abilities as a digital artist. I'm at a great starting point. I think I have a method and technique that will work well and can be tweaked depending on what I want to do. And now all that's left to do is keep practicing and developing my style and my skill, and I'm excited about it. Thank you again so much to Clip Studio for sponsoring this video and letting me use your software. I have absolutely fallen in love with it. Just a reminder to you guys that everything you might need for Clip Studio will be linked down below, so make sure to check them out. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very exhausting for me, but I did have a great time making it. So if you did enjoy, please like, comment, subscribe, the whole shebang, you know what to do. I'm gonna go, so until next time, go do your laundry, check out the sponsor, and go do some art.